I just want to say a few things before we kick off again. Every time we start, I rush ahead, but I never introduce Emma over here. So I know. So round of applause. This is Emma.
Hi, Emma. Thank you.
Did I make up for it?
I'm not a woman who's just pulled off the street. Anyway, hello everyone. Welcome to part 2. Thank you for staying. I want to introduce the wonderful Karen McClure, who is a garden designer, and Justine Hodgson Barker, interior designer, who both work together occasionally and collaborate on projects. So, firstly, both of you, welcome. Karen, can you tell us about how you two both first met and how you sort of started collaborating?
So we were both in the kind of juvenile stages of setting up our businesses, and it was probably more a little bit of a pipe dream then, wasn't quite really getting our stride with the business. It was a bit of an idea, and we met at a networking event, didn't we, in Tunbridge Wells, called Tunbridge Wells Mums in Business. So at that time, I was kind of setting up my business, was quite lonely. You know, when you kind of first start out, you've got a lot of questions, and went to an event and felt massively an imposter at that event, because I think at that point we had to there was 20 of us around a table. They were like, stand up, introduce yourself. I stood up. I think I'd done one garden, some B&Q log roll and one tree fern, but I was a garden designer in my head. So I kind of felt like a real imposter standing up and saying I'm a garden designer. But very conveniently met Justine, who was probably at a similar sort of stage of your business. We met through that networking event, and then we didn't really join forces immediately. I think it's happened very organically. You had young children, I had young children, and that's where we kind of set our little journey together, didn't we?
Yeah, I think you're right. It kind of just happened organically, and just supporting one another and inspiring one another and swapping best practices as well. There's so many similarities between our businesses. We have same stages as you who garden designers here. We, concept, detailed design through to completion. So we were able to support one another through there. We even use the same software, Vectorworks and stuff. So sharing best practice on that as well.
I think it just goes to show the importance as well of having a network or some kind of community. And like what you've also, created here at Corkers is incredible, because you're bringing people together. You're giving people that bit of support. And so sometimes that also doesn't really always continue. Sometimes you need to stop that particular group or that particular business coach or whatever it might be, and then do something else. But they've all been really instrumental in your journey.
And tell us a little bit about when you come to work on a project, will you, presumably a client will contact maybe one of you, and then, does that kind of collaboration naturally come from there? Like if one client is, wanting their garden designed and actually they mention they're also looking for someone to help them with their interiors, Karen, do you kind of at that point mention Justine's name, or how does that collaboration actually happen? It's sort of in real life.
Yeah, I mean, historically, quite often as garden designers, you'll come in at the end of a project. So if you are working on a client that's done a renovation, or they've done their interiors, quite often they're like, okay, we've done the house, we've done the interiors, we need to turn our attention to the garden because it's looking a bit shabby compared to everything else on their site. So quite often we'd go in towards the end of a project, but I have in the last few years seen that shift massively, where actually we're working alongside the interior designer or the architect. And what's great is that if you're kind of working alongside each other at that point, the client has then potentially been used to paying professional fees. So they've got a standard, they've got an understanding of kind of what these things cost. So it's actually really useful to be working together in collaboration from the start. And there's so much crossover and references that you can basically take from each other, isn't there?
Yeah, I go and look at a whole space, like the fabric of the building, obviously the inside, but also the outside. And there comes a natural progression for kind of referral, because the kind of person that hires my services would hire the likes of a garden designer, maybe a personal stylist, and all kinds of services like that. So it's just you don't have to sell anyone service. It's just a natural referral, really.
How important would you say that interior to exterior space is, Justine, for all the projects you've done and you've worked on?
Really important, because it's just about that seamless connection, taking similar materials from inside out. We had a barn conversion that we both worked on last year. I'd started with the living space, which had bifold doors to the outside, and of course as soon as that space is elevated, they're like, oh, I think I need to elevate the decking, the terrace. And so that is where I would always be able to recommend Karen. And I did, and you got to work on the whole terrace then, didn't you?
Yeah, we then had a kind of cracking concept really to work with, going out into the garden, because a lot of the interiors had been done. So you had sent me your kind of concept and your design for the interiors just beforehand. So I got a really good grasp of what was going on with kind of the textures and the colours and the scheme inside the house. Even to the point where there was some really lovely artwork, which the client, I quite often, if I'm sort of speaking to a client for a first time, you might pick out something that's a bit of a reference, that just as a bit of a conversation piece, so that lovely piece of artwork, or could be anything that's just finding a little kind of connection with the client. So in this particular case, I mentioned a really beautiful painting that she had on the wall, which I believe belonged to her dad, didn't it?
Yeah, she inherited it from her dad, and that's where I took all the kind of palette from originally. And then when I shared that with you, that you took the colours for the plants and stuff outside.
So you then kind of got that connection again through. I mean, it's something that's personal to her, and don't ever underestimate just a small item in a house or in the interiors can be a massive catalyst for what you then design for the garden, in terms of taking that as just a little bit of the personality and character of that client out to the garden. So as Justine said, we then use the artwork as inspiration for the planting palette, so all of the colours. So there's simple references, to someone visiting, you might not really notice it, but to the client it's important, and it's got that kind of just relationship with something to do with them in their past. Sometimes clients like bringing in their plants from a wedding bouquet or something. So just nice connections, really.
Yeah. And then it worked the other way, because then they wanted the rest of their space done. So they're essentially their master ensuite, so their bathroom and dressing room and bedroom. And then you sent me your concept and all the materials that you had specified, and I was able to bring that inside with references to all the kind of hard finishes in the bathroom, and right through to the brickwork you used, the metals that Karen specified, and bringing some of the colours back through. But it was a lot more organic, that space, because you'd made the garden more organic. And so, I don't know, to me, they're all things that a client shouldn't really know that we've done in the background, because it should be a feeling. They just feel better, happier, more connected, whether they're inside or outside.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the cohesion of, I know we said we didn't like that, we were having a chat before and Justine was like, I hate that word.
So overused.
It's overused, yeah. But I mean, obviously there is this natural kind of flow, if you will, or fluidity between the sort of the house and the garden. Have you ever had it, out of interest, where you've maybe had a client and they have wanted like polar opposite things, like maybe they've got really like cottagey style, and so they wanted the interiors to be like cottagey or whatever, and then Karen, they were like, we want this modern sleek garden, everything's grey, and you were like, well, hang on a minute, this is like completely two different vibes going on here. Have you ever had a situation like that, Justine, and how have you dealt with that?
Well, first of all, for a meeting, I always insist they both attend. Like, I won't even hold a meeting if only one attends. So I get them both to come in the office. I get them both to do a Pinterest page. And I love a bit of difference. That's what creates friction, right? That someone has polar opposite ends of the scale. It's my job to bring that together somehow. And I'm sure it's exactly the same in garden design as well. It's what makes the scheme interesting. I like to think that I create designs that are a little bit different and contrived, pretty unique. Like the biggest compliment that any kind of client can give me is not, oh my goodness, what interior designer have you had in? It's, oh wow, this is so you. That's it, bottom line. I don't want it to feel like, oh, this is a certain way, or this is like a Kelly Hoppen type design, or I don't have a house style. It's all client led.
And Karen, just from your perspective, when Justine has obviously designed the interiors, how important is that for you to then maybe like like, will you go into the house and see how the garden looks from the house? So you are sort of thinking about, design points because you're thinking about the view out to the garden.
Yeah, we will often start design by looking at the vistas from kind of interiors. So you might look at your main windows and doors from the house, and a lot of your kind of design will start from, your kind of scribbles and what have you when you first start out, but they're often from those sight lines from the house. The two things that we generally start with are your sight lines, what's going on the end of that sight line. Is it a sculpture? Is it a destination point? Is it a focal point? And is it something that perhaps can be lit up? So you can then appreciate it in the depths of winter, so that it's a little bit more three-dimensional, the garden in the dark and things. So we're definitely looking at kind of the vistas. And then in terms of also connecting back to the materials, it might be the certain thresholds, like say using a clay paver as you demonstrate here, where you're going from one zone to another and you're transitioning through that journey. So it might be that you're putting a particular material that's been used on the interiors, and again you're just creating that sort of harmony through the garden. I like the word cohesion, it doesn't. But yeah, so it's kind of about that kind of connection between both spaces so that it feels seamless.
Well, when you're both on the projects from the get-go together, how deeply involved are you in that process? Because I guess, it's a similar sort of process. You've got the brief and then you're just going through. Can you tell us a bit about that process and how deeply involved you are with each other?
Well, I know from my perspective, and it's about a third of my job is design, and the other 2/3 are administration and project management. And how we actually work together. I suppose one of the biggest thing on big projects is implementation and the program, the contractor program side of things, and how that works.
And how do you find it, Justine, with contractors? Are there contractors typically already on the project doing the work?
I love it if a client's already got a contractor, but because it gives me a chance to work with new people. But essentially, I do have my own contractors as well, my tried and trusted people who can understand the way I work, people who understand my drawings, because I do everything from lighting plans to joinery drawings, so and restructures as well, and I can bring architects in and structural engineers in. So I do like working with contractors who understand my schedules and drawings without asking too many questions. But yeah,
as a team, we've worked really hard on I guess how we appear to clients. So from that very first initial consultation, even just the inquiry on email, whether it's a phone call, dealing with it professionally, we then work really hard at our fee proposals, everything that goes out to a client. So when you are working with a contractor, what you want to be doing is that's kind of then continues through the process. So when a landscaper then gives you that contractual kind of documentation, their quotes, that they are thought about, they're considered, they're professional. It doesn't take that much really to create something, especially with AI that we're all kind of embracing at the moment. It's making sure that continues. So for the process that you've just been through as a designer in terms of winning the business, creating that design, working with the client, to getting them over the line in terms of working with us, being commissioned, to do their design, and then you're kind of handing that work to a landscaper. So you've done a lot of their screening. It's so important that then that is continued through that process. And that's why we really want to aim to work with kind of contractors that then will kind of carry that on for our clients. Because, they're not part of our business, but they're very much part of our reputation. So the contractor and designer relationship is hugely important.
Yeah, I mean, everything comes back on you, right? So.
Well, it's that consistency and alignment across every level. Like you say, Karen, you can do all that work and pay real close attention to that detail, and then, like you say, it just falls off a cliff when someone doesn't have that care and that passion for it as well. In terms of like trends, do you like to stay away from trends, or you're embracing them? I'm sure you've I've seen a lot of Pinterest boards, Justine. What do you think about trends?
Yeah, no, I don't like them, but I think
Stay away.
I think you can embrace them in some of the accessories, for instance. That's a less risky way to embrace trends, but I think the key is to create timeless interiors, whether it's interiors or exteriors.
Specifically for that person's taste.
Yeah, because you want to be creating a design that they're not going to want to change in a few years' time, or even 10 years' time. So yeah, but I mean, Instagram, we have a lot to thank for Instagram for trends. I never even used to know the colour of the year, and now I really sadly do. And
You're in the algorithm.
I do think I'm being brainwashed. Yeah, slowly but surely.
Too much doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Can you guys tell us about the benefits of working in like parallel industries? Because as you were saying, Karen, that, you know, when you first met, you just started out, and I think you just started out. Am I right in thinking that? Yeah. And obviously you found Justine, and it was kind of like this moment where you were both like, oh, it's so lovely to have someone not necessarily in the same industry, but in a parallel industry that, you know, as you were saying, Justine, you're dealing with like 2/3 of your job is like other stuff that you might not have thought you would have to do when you started out as an interior designer. So how does it feel, Karen, to have someone that's kind of going through the same stuff that you're going with? Like, do you ask each other for advice a lot?
Yeah, I think it's huge to have that support. And as Cameron alluded to earlier, when you perhaps I did a garden design diploma, did my RHS exams, did some studying at Hadlow College as well. And then actually you kind of get to start working with real life clients, and you're like, I know nothing. I've got so many voids in my knowledge, especially in terms of running a business. And that's probably the most valuable part of getting to know Justine, because it's more the kind of the technicalities of your business, how you're kind of running your initial stages. Are you charging for a consultation fee? Are you not charging for a consultation fee?
That's changed as well, hasn't it? Throughout the time in the market.
We'll quite often kind of compare our fee proposals and what stage we're at, what we're charging, what our hourly rates are. So that information isn't massively available within the industry. So it's really good to have a benchmark of someone that's not in competition, but equally such a similar kind of process that you can then really kind of compare and question and challenge. I also actually put our fee proposal into Chat GPT yesterday, like literally the whole thing, and it was the most interesting process ever.
I might do this.
It was like a performance review. I literally was floored by ChatGPT yesterday, but it was really interesting because it's so blooming intuitive that actually it kind of pulled me up on a lot of things in my fee proposal. And I was like, he's got a point.
I love it. It's a he. What's he called?
Yeah,
What's he called in your head, Garen? Go on.
Just Chatty.
Bradley?
Just Chatty.
Okay. No offense to the Bradley.
But actually it was as much as you can be worried about AI, I think if you embrace it and if you kind of use that to your advantage, you can free your time up to do other things or to win business or whatever it might be. But it was a really useful process to go through. So, yeah.
Justine, can I ask you, right, you both focus on what's called biophilic design. I had to Google that one, guys. I have no idea what biophilic means. Justine, tell us a little bit about what it does mean, first of all. Does anyone else know what it means? Is it just me? You do. Well done. Okay. Congratulations. And no one else.
One in the audience.
Yeah, one. So it's not just me. That makes me feel a little bit better. So Justine, tell us a little bit about what biophilic design is and how you then implement that on your designs. Because I personally would feel, but I might be wrong here, that it's easier to bring the inside out than it is to bring the outside in. But I might be wrong.
Well, it's all about bringing clients closer to nature, apparently. But I can only say how I use it in my practice naturally without even knowing what that phrase was until in the last few years where it's kind of really blown up. But it's about making use of natural light as much as possible in the way you restructure a property. It's always about using organic, sustainable materials, which are just always going to look nicer no matter what, but also looking at all the man-made materials too, because they will prevent landfill in the long run. So the porcelain, which is emulating marble so well, the polypropylene that's emulating natural fibres like jute, for instance, they're all going to last longer. And then there's a whole technical side, really, of smart controls, which help, monitor energy consumption and lighting, low energy LED bulbs, etc. There's the whole technical side of things as well, which go towards just being more responsible for what you're specifying.
I think just encouraging a destination point in a garden also plays into that kind of complicated word. Because if you've got a place, if you've got somewhere to navigate to, somewhere that you kind of then can be a bit of the heart of the garden, and you've got a really lovely destination point, you're already encouraging people, encouraging the family or whoever you might live with out into that garden space. So, of course, all of the materials, all of the sustainability kicks in, but equally to have a destination point that you can then go and immerse yourself in nature or being outside is obviously quite valuable.
Like a seating area,
Yeah,
or
structure.
I saw on your Instagram earlier, Karen.
Did you?
Yes, I did. A lovely outdoor shower.
Oh yes, that's a really
my.
lovely space.
That really, I was wow, amazing.
Garden.
Anyway, Ollie, carry on.
Are you seeing more and more of your clients taking that conscious decision towards sustainability and what they're choosing to put in the home and the garden? Where are you seeing that with your clients?
Yeah, and I think suppliers are making it easier for us as well. Obviously, it's more on their radar. Maybe social media has brought that to the forefront as well. But more of the suppliers that I deal with, for instance, just have it as part of their green credentials, because they're a B Corp or something. So it's much easier now for us to specify sustainable materials.
I'm going to ask one more question, and that is, for garden designers who don't already have a relationship with interior designers, what qualities should they look for to ensure a good partnership?
I think make sure it's a brilliant connection. First of all, like maybe how many people who are in the garden industry here have connections with interior designers? Yeah, so some, yeah.
And the landscapers? Yeah.
Yeah, because I recommend garden designers all the time, and even kind of landscapers too. I know it's all part and parcel, but if you're looking to make connections, I would recommend firstly you look at someone's portfolio. Obviously, make sure that they do whole houses. At least that's better. So kitchens, bathrooms, right through to living spaces. Obviously, there's interior designers that just do cushions and curtains, and we do that too, but that's more the end game. Okay, because they'll be servicing the kind of demographic that you will be as well. It's always beneficial to look at if they're part of an institute. So our institute is the BIID, British Institute of Interior Design, which I'm a member of. It means you have to be at a certain level. You have to be qualified for a start. But obviously, because it's an unregulated industry, which I think garden design industry is as well. Obviously, there's people who've cut their teeth on many projects already. So again, that goes back to their portfolio. And obviously, if they're local and you work local, brilliant. I only really do Kent, so I've got some really good connections over the 15 years I've been in the industry. So therefore, it's about when you go to networking groups, etc., knowing key people that you can recommend, because their work, they're reliable, they're not going to let you down if I recommend you, etc. So I think it's invaluable, especially in the industry at the moment, because I don't know if it's the same for the garden design industry, but it's the quietest I've known it in 15 years, the last year and a half. And it's business is harder to win.
Definitely.
I think it's important to connect with, because this is probably the first event I've gone to where actually I've been invited with an interior designer, or Angus and the AV, all of those kind of elements that can play into a property renovation or a garden renovation or anything. So the more we can perhaps do of this kind of event, where you're not just tapping into your landscapers and your garden designers or vice versa, you're actually, the wider kind of scope is quite huge there. And I don't think I've ever really been to an event where there is actually the opportunity to meet interior designers, and even for landscapers, send your kind of portfolio or credentials to all the interior designers in Kent or the areas that you're working in, because there's a huge kind of referral opportunity there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank you, Justine.
welcome.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you. Thanks for
I
inviting me.
will just ask if anyone's got any questions. Please put your hand up and I'll pass the mic around. Kat?
It's more for Karen's side. Do you ever find that customers have spent all their budget inside, then
Yeah, we
cut
get the dregs of the
corners
budget.
when you're right at the end?
Definitely.
'Cause
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
us building gardens and decks and whatnot,
Yeah.
quite often they've nearly run out of money
Yeah.
doing the house and the rest.
Yeah. I mean, that happens to us all the time and it's really frustrating.
My fault.
I think it's so your fault. I think the more you can do on social media, the more you can try and perhaps kind of champion your USP or the importance of getting involved early. And, you know, if we go and see a project now with a client that's thinking of the property renovation, the kind of the interiors as well, we will always try and point out to them. So, like, think of your sequence of works. Can you save money? Have you got ground workers in? Can they help with kind of setting out levels and that sort of thing? So let's get the garden design done at the same time. And then we also try and advocate that kind of, you know, you've got certain pots of money you're spending on your property. So let's try and kind of use some for the garden, some for the interiors. And then you can kind of allocate, you know, your funds so that you've got a balance all over. And we do work quite hard at that. But more often than not, we do come into the kind of tail end of the project, unfortunately. But we do try and make a point of, I guess, advertising the benefits of coming into it at the same time. And that's why having your kind of strategic alliances like property developers, interior designers, if you can try and kind of get even if just a couple of really good solid relationships, hopefully they can then be kind of singing from the same hymn sheet with you.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess it wasn't really about a question. It's the fact that you know, when interior designers work with garden designers, you know, the fact when you're on a build that, you know, needs a driveway in, having those designs already for me as a landscaper, it's we can set the road in before the house is built. So it means while it's being marked out, it means we can do the driveway. You know, we can get it up to a certain level so all the trades can get in, access nicely in the winter, making the interior, you know, more efficient, you know, so that budget is being spent, you know, across the board, and it's being efficient with its spending. So, you know, working together for me is a big yes, you know, I would love to see more of it.
And that's great intel for me, because very often I'm in there at the beginning with the architects, or at least I should be. And so when, you know, that becomes part of the conversation, if I've got that kind of intel, then that's really useful.
But how many times I've you know, been on a project where now, you know, the garden designer's taken over and we're now in the project, and suddenly we're digging through and it's like, now we've got this crushed concrete. Well, what's this for? Oh, it's where we got in. And for me, it's like, well, we're here with a machine, we're doing this once, why are we now digging through, sieving through to then change this? This is what costs more. So, you know, we don't want to put that on cost to the client, we don't want to do that. So working together to make the access very easy, getting all them services in beforehand, you know, makes more money in the pot for the client, for the designer and for the landscapers. So
Well said.
Thank you, Ryan.